Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to make a journal with this piece of junk mail. This is a piece of junk mail that says you can have a credit card. Okay, so it's a tri-fold piece of cardboard. Now, if you don't happen to have this kind of piece of cardboard, think about what's in your stash that you could put together and create. I mean, a cereal box would work very nicely. Okay, and I'm not going to give you a lot of measurements because it's going to be different for everyone if you're using a cereal box, but the cereal box will work beautifully. I'm just using this piece of junk mail. This piece of junk mail happens to be a little bit shorter on one side because it folds inside, which is fine. I'm actually going to use it upside down like this when I get ready to use it. And my pages inside are going to be jelly prints. Now, I have actually measured out to see about how big I need to have my jelly paper, and just because I needed to pre-plan a little bit. And this legal size paper folded in half and cut down a little bit works really well. I did not jelly print on both sides. That leaves room to write if you wanted to write on something, so that you have art space and then writing space. So, you know, it's all what you might want to do with a journal. Anyways, we're going to get busy here, and I am going to try to do this in one video. Here's the problem with that. It might get too long, and too long of a video just is really awful. One of the first things I need to do is to paint this, because I want to use jelly prints as the cover, and I don't want all this writing to show through. So I have some just cheap, this happens to be wall paint, and I'm going to use it because I have it, but just some cheap craft paint would work. I'm just going to paint this whole piece so that it covers up this writing. And I'm going to paint the whole thing so that it's evenly textured. And I'm doing this first so that it can get dry. And it doesn't look like one coat's going to cover it. So I may have to do some of that off camera. I'll tell you how many coats it's going to take. But I'm just going to cover this up. I measured ahead of time, and that flyer is just 6 inches deep. So 5 3/4 inches gives me just a touch so that my pages don't come out. So what I'm using a quilter's ruler. I've had it for years. I love it because it's gridded. And I am just going to tear these like so. And eventually we'll fold them in half. I did look at that one to make sure that the numbers and letters were right side up. That's kind of important when you're making pages. And these are just jelly prints on legal size copy paper. All right, so I have my signatures ready. I did sort of color coordinate them a little bit, just because I wanted them to not be all the same. Anyways, they're ready, but my cover's not dry, so I'm going to step on, because when I sew my signatures into the cover, I know that I'm going to want to leave my 2 little strings for each signature hanging, and therefore I'm going to want some dangles to put on there. So what I am going to do is I'm going to use some cereal box, and I'm going to punch out a bunch of circles out of the cereal box. Now do make sure that your punches aren't going to get destroyed like this. You want to make sure the punch is strong enough, is what I'm trying to say. And I want 2 circles for each dangle. So, let me see here. 1, 2, 3, yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to do 3 little ones and 1 big one. Now, if you don't have a cereal box, you could layer up some cardstock. I am not worried about painting this because I'm going to glue 2 pieces together in the end. They're going to go together like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this to the back side of my paper, like so. And I am just going to use the art glitter glue, and this will just be prep work for down the road when I get this finished. Okay, so we're a little further along. We have our little pieces ready for our dangles. We have our 2 signatures sort of put together, and I have 8 sheets of paper in each signature, which gives you 16 pages, double-sided, 32. So each signature has 32, so there's 64 pages in here. I did have to put 2 coats of this wall paint, house paint. You know, this was just a mist tint from the hardware store that I've had for forever, and I'm starting to use those things, trying to use them up. And of course, this is our piece of junk mail. This needed 2 coats of that paper, of that paint, and it doesn't completely cover it, but it will knock it down where it won't show through the jelly print. And that's all I really wanted, was to not have it show through the jelly print. These are the jelly prints I am going to use for the covers. I have these 2 pieces, which I really love, and then I am going to put this piece across the seam in the back. It kind of ties with this one. I don't think you'll notice that it's, you know, too out of place. The next thing we need to do, though, is to create our spines, and I need my, there it is. I decided a long time ago that I was going to use this kind of upside down. This is the way it came in the mail. This is the outside cover. It's the longest. The inside flap is a little shorter. So what I'm going to do, and if you were to do this with a cereal box or your papers, You would want to do it your sizes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a 1-inch spine, and to do that I have to fold a 1-inch spine here and a 1-inch spine on the other side. Let me think if I remember this correctly. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Sometimes you have to think. I want to take the 1-inch spine piece out of this inside flap. This is going to be the inside flap on my book. This is going to be the outside flap, and there's actually going to be too much of it, and I'm going to actually cut off some of it eventually. Is that right? Is that what I wanted? Nope. All right. Okay. The longer flap is the one I'm going to fold. And this ruler is lovely and has a nice 1-inch mark down the middle of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ruler with that 1-inch mark right down the already existing fold. I'm going to give it a little crease with bone folder. Double check it. Probably shouldn't have lifted it up. And then because I've creased it with the bone folder, I can crease it more easily by folding it against the ruler. And I'm creasing this now because creasing it after I add the cover might be more difficult. Okay, so there is my first basic fold, like so. And now I'm going to fold this on the inside of this piece. Having painted that fold line white, it's kind of hard to see. It might be easier if I... Are you all saying, get it right, Tanya, get it right? I'm picking up junk from my desk. All right, so now what we have is this. Okay, so our signatures are going to go in there. This is going to come up and fold. But this cover is too long. We are not going to leave it this long. We're going to cut it off a little bit because we don't want it that long. What I want to do is to create sort of a buckle kind of thing for it. So I am going to cut it off. Oh, let's see here. It's about 8 inches right now. I think I'm going to cut off about 2.5 inches of it. This is kind of one of those things where you kind of make it up as you go along. When you're using junk mail, it's not an exact science. I have that piece left over. I'm gonna keep it because I'm probably gonna use it. Okay, so now this is our book. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a flap that this buckles under eventually. But first, I want to cover this. And as I said, I'm going to use these papers right here. This one, and I'll add the other strip later. I'm actually going to put this so that it's sort of centered in here. See, I have about 1 1.25 inches all the way around. So that's my plan, is to lay it down like that. Now, normally you very often cut off the corners to make it fold in better. This is copy paper, and I'm quite sure that I can fold it properly, so I am not going to do that. I am going to just fold these corners in. It will help to strengthen the corner. So I think we've got too much of this paper, so I think I'll cut about 2.5. Is that about right? Yep. I'm going to cut about 2 inches off of it. I'd rather have a little too much than not enough. Do it like that. And I am going to use Mod Podge to put this down. It will probably wrinkle up a little bit. I'm okay with that. I'll be putting Mod Podge over the surface of it as well, over the front. I like to do that with covers because it seems to protect them. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Okay, so we have this on here. I did not put this piece on just yet. We'll get that in a little bit. But one of the things you have to think about is this paper's wet right now, and that's fine. But if you let this dry flat like this, these places right in here are likely to crack, where if you bend it right now while it's wet so that it can form, it can stretch. Paper does stretch, it's a fiber, to the shape you want it, it's gonna dry better. Okay, so this is actually going like this when it's finished. But what I'm going to do is I am going to leave it like this, because that way it's easier to make it stand up properly. And I'm not going to put the insides in. I am just going to let it stand here and get dry before I put the inside pieces in, before I put this strip over the back. I just want to make sure that my folds are in there, that all the folds will be happy when they get dry. Okay, so we're just going to leave it sit right there like that and let it get dry, and I'll be back to show you the next step. Okay, so I want to do 2 more little things and then we'll continue to let things dry. The cover's not really completely dry yet, but I want to get this piece covered with this lovely little piece, and this is the piece I cut off. And what I'm going to do is, eventually, it is going to be glued back to the front here as a flat. Okay, and then the cover will go in and tuck. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to use my little tab punch thing, and I'm going to punch the corners of this off, because I would like it to look like a tab, like so. Let's take a look at it and see if that's far enough over, if I need to trim it some more. I may want to take it out a little further. I think I want to make it look more tab-like. So that means I think that's more what I want it to look like. We'll see in just a second. I have to put this back. Yes. It just gives it a little bit more of a step here. Just makes it look a little more tab-like. So what I'm going to do and what I'm going to use is this piece of jelly paper, and I want to just kind of, just going to roughly cut this off so that I don't have so much that I'm using that I'm wasting. And we're going to go 1, 2, okay. And I'm just going to use Mod Podge to do this. Okay, when it dries, I will use the tab punch again to repunch those. I didn't want to try to punch through both layers of the paper and the cardboard with my punch, so that's why I pre-punched it. So I'll do that when it dries. And then I am going to put this on here. I am going to be covering this with Mod Podge when I finish the book up, so it's fine that it's on the outside. It doesn't bother me. But we're just going to let things dry again and get this totally finished drying. And I'll be back. Alrighty, so we are ready. We have gotten our outside covered. It's nice and dry, as you can hear. Probably wouldn't have had to wait this long, but in the middle of things. So now we're going to put some inside papers on, and I'm going to use some more jelly prints, of course. I have already cut them so that they're about 1/4 of an inch smaller, and they are going to overlap right here in the back. There again, I'm not worried about it because the jelly prints themselves look sort of collaged. So I'm just going to use Mod Podge, my Mod Podge and glue mixture. I use a mixture of Mod Podge and glue together, and I am going to glue this on. I'm also going to start covering. This is my little piece to do it's my tuck flap, my flap for the tuck. And I am going to find my press, my punch, so that I can punch the edges, and then I'm going to Mod Podge it as well. I just overlapped the two pieces. I did not worry if I got a little extra Mod Podge because I'm going to cover this whole thing with Mod Podge. That will be the next step. Front and back cover, I'll be covering it with Mod Podge just as a protective coating. But once again, you want to make sure you fold your papers, you fold your signatures, you fold your lines, because otherwise, if it's not folded when it dries, there will be issues with it, tearing the paper. So I just am going to stand it up right here and let it get dry. Again, this little piece is going to have Mod Podge on it too, and it's going to take a couple of things because I have to flip it over and back and forth. So I just went ahead and started getting Mod Podge on it, and I'll be back when this dries. Alrighty, so now we have the simple task of covering everything with Mod Podge. I don't know if it's going to take 1 or 2 layers. I am going to do this. I'm not going to make you watch it all because I'm going to have to dry it in between. I will be drying it stood up with the folds in it like that. Probably just like that. I will not try to do both sides of it at the same time, simply because it will be too hard to get it on there smoothly. So I'm just going to do this. Probably not going to make you watch the whole thing. And just realize that I'm just covering this with Mod Podge just to protect it, just to give it that little bit of protection. Now this is Mod Podge mixed with glue, and if I can remember, I will put you a link right up there as to how I mix my Mod Podge. This is collage medium. This is finishing. I use it for everything. Okay. I don't just use it to collage things down. I don't just use it to protect things. I use it for just about everything. But it's collage. It's Mod Podge mixed with glue, and I have a video on exactly how I do that. Okay, so we're gonna finish this thing up finally. I have my little circly pieces, which I did ink around. I have my 2 signatures of Gelli prints, which I have ready to go. I have the little piece that's left that we're going to attach back under here for this to tuck into. And I have my cover, which I told you I ended up, I would tell you how many times I Mod Podged it. I did Mod Podge both sides twice. It just gave it a nicer, sturdier feel. It's still got a little bend to it, but it will flatten out as the book is sort of finished up. I do need to ink the rest of it. I inked some of it, but I wanted to show you how I was inking it, just so I left part of it. And I have decided I am going to add a little bling to the outside of this. So I have this decorative beaded fringe. It's kind of a light green, but I thought it went really well with the book. And I'm going to add that to the front here in a few minutes. But first I wanted to ink, and I'm just using my black archival ink. And I've already inked a good part of it, but I just went like this. I just wanted to grunge up the edge of it a little bit. And the archival ink takes a minute or two to dry when you're going over Mod Podge, so you want to be a little bit careful that you don't get it everywhere. Mod Podge is sort of a plastic, so you want to remember that. And I just see how it just took the edge and just kind of darkened it up and did that. So it's gonna take a minute or so to dry. I'm just gonna set it over there while we work with this other piece, because what I'm gonna do is this trim, of course, it has the beads and they're stitched into that, but if you cut it, it's gonna come loose. So we have to make sure that we get the trim glued in. So to do that, what I'm going to do is wrap it around the edge a little bit, so that the ends of my thread where the beaded trim is sewn in is on the back side. I can put some glue on it, make sure it stays in. So I want to do 2 things. First, I'm going to cut this probably right about there. I had scissors. There they are. And I'm actually going to put a dab of glue right here on the end of this and set it aside so that it does not come undone down the road. Then I am going to use sticky tape to put that trim on because I don't want to use just glue. I don't want the glue to show through. So I am going to use sticky tape. I'm going to use sticky tape and a little glue, just so you know. Double-sided tape is what I'm trying to say, double-sided tape. Come here. And then I'm going to put a little tiny bit of glue right along this edge. And that is where the thread for the beads will actually sit. There's a piece of tape on this end. Let's get rid of that. So now it sticks out on both ends, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it around. Come on now, beads, behave yourselves, stay down. And I will bring them back here. And I think I'm going to use a little piece of sticky tape on the back and glue on the back. It'll make it easier for me to get it glued down with the double-sided tape. And it will hold it in place while the glue dries. That's kind of my plan. Now, I made this piece nice and wide because I need it to hold the flap in. This is going to be my closure. I'm going to be tucking this flap into this piece. So when it comes to gluing it on, I want to have a reasonable amount, 3/4 of an inch or so, that I have stuck to the surface of this. Figuring out where it goes exactly. I've sort of already figured that I need about the edge of this. Let me move some of the beads. About a 1/2 inch in from the edge of the book. I'm going to be sticking it down about 3/4 of an inch, and that gives it a good flap for this to tuck under. That's the plan. Okay. And once again, I'm going to use some sticky tape on this and glue, because that way the tape will help to hold the glue in place while it dries. One of the things you don't want to do is use double-sided tape only, because if you do anything that touches up against that double-sided tape underneath a pocket or underneath a flap is going to it's going to get things sticky, and it's going to create a problem. So you want to make sure that you've got glue on the outside of that line. I was honestly hoping I could get those clamps in a little further and that they could clamp all the way to the edge, and it's not working. So oh, I know what I can do. I can do that. So if we put these little ones right there, and then I can put this bigger one further in. There we go. That works. I just really want to hold it in place while I punch those and figure that out. There we go. It'll hold it pretty well. We'll just let that get dry. Now we're going to measure and punch holes in our signatures. And I'm just going to do a standard 3-hole pamphlet stitch on this one. Except that when I go to stitch it, I am going to bring the threads out the top so that I can put our little dangles on. And I use a centering ruler. This ruler is marked with a 0 in the middle, and it goes out in inches. And these are 5 3/4, I think is what we ended up with. So I need to go to about 2, yep, 2 and 7/8. So, excuse me, I do apologize. I'm going to put a dot right here in the center, and then one at 2.5. Okay, when I go to punch the cover, I will use those same measurements, center and 2.5. And then I'm just going to use my hole puncher, my punchy tool, and punch holes. And I'm using an old telephone book, but any old book will work. I just protect my surface with the telephone book. Okay, so that one's punched. And I didn't clip that or anything. I usually don't have too much trouble with it, but if you do, use a little clip and clip your book together like so. I don't seem to find that causes me trouble. If it does come up, if I mess it up and I've dropped it or something, I can usually line it back up without too much trouble. One of the things I will tell you is to make sure to remember which side is the top, because if you have anything where it's off a little bit, you want to make sure that the top and the bottom of your signatures line up once you put them in the book. I have no idea if this video has turned into one that has to be 2 videos, or if it is going to be short enough, if I can make it short enough to be 1 video. I will let you know by a comment. It won't be in a link. If it is 2 videos, I'll make sure to put links in. But I just don't really know what's going to happen with it. So, alrighty. Our next step is to mark the inside of our spine, which is this place right here, for 2 sets of holes because I have 2 signatures. Now my spine is 1 inch wide. So what I want is, I want one signature about 3/8 of an inch from one crease, and the other signature about 3/8 of an inch from the other crease. And this ruler has those markings on it. If I use, let's see here, they're right there. So I have to get this lined up. Oh, I should have put that on after I sewed those in. Oh well. You know what? This is going to be a little tough. Let's see here. First off, we got to get this lined up. This is 6 inches, so we have it easier. They're 3. But remember, we're putting our dots at 2.5. So, sorry for the glare. Just trying to get it straight, guys. Okay, so we're going to put a dot at 0 and 2.5 and 2.5. Okay, that looks pretty good. Watch your fingers on the back side. Let's go ahead and get your holes punched. Now I'm going to use this turquoise wax linen. It's kind of a tealy turquoise color because I thought it went pretty well. And I have some scraps. I do not know if they're going to be long enough to do this or not, but I thought I would check it out because I like to use up my scraps if I can. And this one's going to be perfect. So we're going to start with this one. And sometimes you need a needle, sometimes you don't. So we'll see if I have to have a needle or not. And I'm going from the inside of the signature through the hole there, and this needle is going to make my life a lot easier, so we're going to get one. One nice thing about wax linen is you can flatten it out with your thumbnail, and it will usually go through a pretty small space. Would help if I held it closer to where I could see it. Doesn't want to go in there. I may have to get a bigger needle. Sorry guys, didn't mean to take so long just to thread a needle. There we go. Alright, so now that. Let's flip this around where we can see what we're doing. And we're going to go back through the hole from the outside. Back into our signature. And I have managed to let them slide around where I have to put a few pages on at a time. Got my beads. Now I'm going to go back through the bottom hole to the outside. That's just an in and out thing. You do want to sort of be careful that you don't split your wax linen. One nice thing about wax linen is because it is waxed, it doesn't split as easily as some other things might. Okay. So now what I've done is I've gone out, in, out, back in the same holes, so I end up with my strings, one on each side of the cover. And now I can pull them tight, make sure I've got them snug. This seems to be making, this morning seems to be acting like it's more difficult than it is. I don't know exactly why it's doing that, but. And now we're just going to tie this into a knot up here. Now the reason I do that is I'm going to add some little dangly things to this. When I do, what's going to happen is that they will act as little bookmarks. So now we're going to get the other piece out and see if I have another piece that's long enough. I don't think I do. So we're going to need to cut a piece off, which is fine. One, two, Well, it helps if you have your papers in there. Yes, it might have been a wiser decision to put that on after I stitched my signatures in. Part of the reason I did it ahead of time is I wanted it dry enough so that I didn't have to stop to show you how it closed at the end of the video. So I did myself in by trying to pre-plan. I should have just not worried about having to let it dry. So those beads are a little bit of a pain. They're going to be gorgeous on there, but okay. Okay. Okay, now as you can see, this will just tuck right under there for the closure. And these we're going to just glue to our little strings. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie a little knot in the bottom of it. A couple of little knots. These little knots will help to keep the papers from pulling off the bottom. And I'm going to take one of these. I'm going to put some glue on it. And glue it together just like that. Now, because it's on either side of the string, because it is a piece of cardboard, it's gonna need to flex a little bit. So we're going to put little clips on both sides, like so. That's good. Okay. We don't want these too long because they will get in the way. Now this one's a little too long, but we have this big circle to put on it, so we need to have it a little bit longer. So I am going to make it longer than the others. And I did show how to make these circles earlier in the video, so they're just cardboard from a cereal box with some jelly prints on them. Almost blew that one. Shoo! Okay, so we should be able to take this one apart. Yep. And this one apart. They're not totally dry yet, but they'll be dry soon. We'll leave that one together for a minute. So now we have our book that comes apart like that, opens. It has all these wonderful jelly prints in it. We can take our little pieces and make a bookmark in our pages. Let's take these off. You can see the bigger one. See there? And it bookmarks our page. And then it just puts back together like that. So we have these little dangles out here that can be tucked into our little journal wherever we want. And this buckles together. Now, I hope that gives you some ideas on how to use a piece of junk mail and how to use your jelly prints. A lot of times I hear, well, I make these jelly prints and then I don't know how to use them. So I'm hoping this gives you an idea on using up your jelly prints. I love these beads. It's like, I'm really glad I decided to go with the beads. I think it came out really cute that way. But how to use your jelly prints, how to use your junk mail. I hope this has been fun for you. I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial. I have no idea how long it's going to end up being, and whether or not I'll need to have broken it into 2 parts. If I did have to break it into 2 parts, I promise that the 2 videos will go up one right after the other, and there will be links to both of them. I don't like it when you cannot find the other part. and I have been known to do that in the past. I'm really pleased with the closure. Anyways, guys, I'm going to read you a quote from our 1001 Ways to Creativity, and then I am going to get busy probably editing this video, but I do have some gardening I need to do today. When something can be read without effort, great effort has gone into its writing. Enrique Jardel Poncela. Okay, guys, go have fun. Make some art. Bye-bye.